Hi, this is a recording of a presentation where I cover VMware's advanced products, go through end-user computing, a bit around what end-user computing is and the different options within the VMware portfolio, touch on what virtual desktops are and the difference between session-based and virtual desktops. Then we'll go through automation and operations management, the vRealize automation, vRealize operations, and VOA. Then finish with disaster recovery, where I'll touch on high availability, fault tolerance, vSphere replication, and SRM, Site Recovery Manager. And I'll also touch on private cloud disaster recovery. What is virtual desktop computing? So it's the provision of client-based desktops via server hardware rather than having all of your processing, memory, storage capabilities provided by a local laptop that you would use in a traditional infrastructure. Each user within the environment runs their desktop, be it Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, within a hypervisor on a server which resides in the data center. Provides many benefits over traditional desktop computing. You can use laptops, tablets, thin clients, zero clients, phones, any number of different devices to access your desktop. You can take advantage of the additional processing horsepower within server hardware. You can take advantage of GPU acceleration, so the addition of graphics processing units into the server to leverage higher performance graphics capabilities, particularly useful in CAD, CAM, graphics and editing type environments. There are security benefits inherent with VDI, as in the data which you access resides in the data center. Your client desktop that you access resides in the data center, so no information ever leaves the corporate data center. It means that corporate security is centrally managed and maintained. So there is two approaches to providing desktops to remote workers via laptops, thin clients, tablets. One is VDI, which we just touched upon, and the other is session virtualization, or remote desktop services, or terminal services you may know it as, where instead of each user having access to a single desktop that they work on, they share a server operating system which is provisioned in such a way that each individual gets access to a session and are isolated from one another in the session. Can lead to higher consolidation ratios. You can get more people working on servers this way because you only have one server operating system for the hypervisor to provide, whereas in a VDI environment you provide a full client environment, full OS for each user that connects to it. It's not always an either or. It's not one's an old technology that's dead now and you need to move everyone to VDI. It doesn't work like that. In certain circumstances, it's a better way to manage your remote desktop workers and provision services for them. So luckily within VMware's Horizon platform, you don't necessarily have to choose between one or the other. You don't have to migrate everyone over to VDI from session provisions desktops. It can actually manage both, can sit across the top of both environments and allow you to provision services to whichever environment is most appropriate for the customer. Key feature of the VMware Horizon platform is the user workspace, where users can choose from a range of the applications made available to them, be it specific desktops that they can access, whether that's a Windows 7 desktop or Windows 8 desktop, Windows 10, whatever it may be, or the actual applications that they need, because within the Horizon platform you can just deploy applications to users rather than giving them access to a full desktop. Behind the scenes, it's still running on a desktop or operating system or in a session workspace, but the user only gets access specifically to that application, which can be quite useful to allow them to work on different machines and different environments on their client devices. So in previous generations of VDI or session or terminal server environments, the user wanted access to a specific application. That application would need to be installed by an administrator to the operating system of the environment they were working on, just like you would in a full laptop or desktop environment where you would have to say install Microsoft Word, you would install the CD into the CD drive, click setup.exe, go through the process, next, and after 5 minutes, Word is installed. Within the VMware Horizon portfolio, you have a feature called App Volumes, which allows you to tie specific applications to specific Windows desktops. And within these app volumes, as they're called, these are pre-configured virtual machine disks. Within the app volume itself has all the prerequisites that the application needs to run. So it might be all the associated DLLs or file dependencies that application needs to run. So what this does, it speeds up the process of deploying applications to users. Doesn't need a user to log on or log off again. The administrator can do all this via policy. It also means that instead of having to install the application multiple times to multiple client operating systems, you just have it there once, and as many users as you wish can access it. So it saves on storage space within your environment. Another part of Horizon Suite is Horizon Air, which enables you to provision desktops to users via VMware's Vcloud solution. So this takes advantage of the storage, the processing, the memory, which is available within vCloud, and you can provision desktops as you see fit. This can be particularly useful for times of year where you may have contract workers, where you need to provision an extra number of desktops, but you don't have necessarily all the on-site client hardware, desktops, laptops, to give them access to desktops. In times of boom and bust, administrators can allow the cloud to take some of this load off the primary or core site. Horizon Flex is a product within the portfolio which is similar in many ways to the VMware Workstation or VMware Player products. This is particularly useful for contract workers, where you may have workers on site who use their own laptops but need access to corporate information or corporate desktops to enable them to do their jobs. Horizon Flex allows you to manage the amount of time contractors have access to corporate information, so they can run a virtual machine on their device, gives them access to corporate data, and then after a specific amount of time, when a contract ends or in line with compliance, Horizon Flex can terminate access to that virtual machine. It's all encrypted, so if a contractor's laptop is stolen, there's no chance of anyone external to the business getting access to corporate data held on that laptop. So just to summarise, why do we look at end-user computing and why is end-user computing useful? Security we touched upon. If you're working on your desktop and your desktop is within the data centre, no data ever leaves the data centre. It's reliable. You take advantage of server class hardware in the data center, redundant PSUs, power supplies, redundant memory, redundant processors, higher performance memory, high performance processors, all backed up by UPSs, and gives a level of reliability that desktop computing laptops can't provide. Remote access capabilities. Obviously you need access to the data center remotely. Because the data center and desktop provision is held centrally, you can access it remote locations. So provided you have internet access and the correct security in place, be it a VPN or SSL VPN, whatever the organization needs to comply with their security policies, you can provide remote access to clients. High performance, we touched upon, taking advantage of server class hardware with larger CPUs, more memory, can give an overall improvement in performance. It's also expandable, so at certain times of the day, week, month, year, as users may need access to additional processing resources, because this is in a virtual environment, IT can provide that, can scale their user computing environment as they need. Simplified management. From an IT perspective, instead of having to go around and administer many desktop computers, laptops, they can do this centrally, deploy updates, patches, fixes to a limited number of virtual desktops rather than practically unlimited number of physical desktops. Users can bring their own devices to access their desktops or applications because the security is inherent with VDI and session desktop provision. There's no issue with users accessing those desktops using their own devices. It also allows devices that wouldn't normally be capable of accessing Windows desktops to access them. And finally, desktop as a service. You can scale in line with your business needs, unrestricted by the hardware within your data center, and it's all seamless as and when your business needs it. So the second part of this presentation is on vRealize Operations Management, which deals with the management of your existing VMware environment, simplifies that management. So why do we need operations management? VMware, vSphere, vCenter is fantastic at consolidating compute resources, but sometimes it can provide an awful lot of information, which can mean that IT administrators don't necessarily know how to get the best out of their systems. vCenter is constantly writing logs, constantly collecting information and storing it in log files. It has some reporting capabilities, but it's limited in terms of being able to determine when you're going to run out of resources, how much consolidation you've still got left in your environment, how much room for growth that gives you. Trying to pull all this information from disparate sources and trying to make sense of it can be difficult, time-consuming. Key features of the vRealize Operations Manager: dashboards such as this one that provides you with statistics, heat maps, metrics and recommendations all about your specific environment. So health tells you about any immediate issues you need to think about within your organization. What is the current health of your environment? Risk. Any future issues you might need to think about. Are you getting up to the absolute limits of your hardware within your organization? Do you need to start thinking about future provision of hardware, expanding, getting budgetary information in place about how to expand? This gives you that granular approach to management. Enables you to plan for the future. Efficiency. So when organizations migrated from physical to virtual, a lot of the time you would size for what you have now, add a little bit of room for growth, And then you would make sure that whatever server hardware you put in place for the virtualization project is big enough to contain what you are currently doing plus some. The efficiency section within vRealize Operations Manager can monitor your environment, and it can say this server or these servers, they've been given 2 GB of RAM each, but they only ever use 512 meg. So there's space there we can reclaim, memory space we can reclaim and use for something else. Or if we reclaim that then means that we can go a little longer with our current growth, with our current capacity trends before we run out of resources. Pulls all that information there for you. Troubleshooting, provision of health, risk and efficiency metrics to enable you to detect and resolve performance, capacity and optimization issues before they become a problem for the organization. A lot of the information that it displays are in the form of badges. So it shows you health, risk and efficiency, and then sub areas within those categories around workload, anomalies, faults, capacity, time remaining, stress of your current environment, reclaimable capacity and density. And these are the sorts of super metrics that the system shows you. In my current setup, I have space for 21 more VMs based on the size of the VM that I've currently got. What my current consolidation ratios are, what they could be, how much time remaining I've got before my resources become exhausted, before I need to start panicking. It manages all this for you. Projects, it enables you to do what-if scenarios. So what if I need to provision more servers? What if my IT director suddenly comes to me with a project where I'm going to need to provision 20 more servers? How is that going to impact my environment? What if my users start saving more holiday photos than they currently save? What happens to my storage? When am I going to run out of storage, processing power, memory? When am I going to consume all of my available networking? When is that going to become a problem for me? And all these what-if scenarios and many, many more can be tested and built into your current system. You can commit projects as well. So if you know specifically that a project is up and coming and it's going to happen on a certain date, it's not in the system yet, but it will be there. You can build a project, incorporate that in your existing workload, and then plan all future health, risk, efficiency metrics. You can build this project into your existing environment and commit it, plan with it for the future. Heat maps are a nice visual way of seeing what your current system is doing, shows you any errors. You can configure this to look at different metrics, different configurations within your environment to show you any issues. You can generate customizable dashboards, reports and views so that you see the information you want to see when you want to see it. And this is also useful if IT departments want to generate reports for directors, board level people when they need to prove that they need more storage, more compute, more memory, whatever it may be. These reports take all that information, puts it into a nice readable format for people to read, full of graphics. Another feature, management packs, we'll look at. Management packs allow you to extend the capabilities of the vRealize Operations Manager to pull information from different sources. So there's packs for AWS, EMC storage. There are packs for Dell storage systems, HP storage systems, and these are all available from solutionsexchange.vmware.com. So you can continue to add to your vRealize Operations Management suite as you need to. Finally, just because we touched on end user compute, there's also management capabilities for Horizon. You can apply to vRealize Operations Manager to monitor, report back on your Horizon estate. Summary of features, feel free to pause the video and you can read through those at your leisure. So something important to touch on is the Vsphere Optimization Assessment. The VOA is a free 30-day test of vRealize Operations Manager, which you deploy in a customer's environment, which will sit there and pull all the different metrics that VRops generates and allow you to generate after 30 days a report for the customer which shows what their current environment is doing, when they're going to run out of space, when they're going to run out of capacity, or any issues they've currently got in their environment. And it gives you a nice consultative approach to sit down with the customer and go through any issues they may have. And when complete, you can give them a VMware Vsphere Optimization Assessment report with your company name on it, company logo on it, and deliver that to your customers. So another part of the vRealize suite of products is vRealize Automation. This provides a self-service catalog for users. This platform supports the DevOps methodology, where instead of development teams relying on IT to provide underlying infrastructure, software, services they need to develop their applications, you can automate that process. So within vRealize Automation, IT set up the basic infrastructure, hypervisors, etc., storage. So why do we need automation? Why is this useful? Well, if developers have to rely on IT to put things in place for them to do their jobs, they may have to wait a considerable amount of time for IT to provision those services. This leads to slow workflows, inconsistencies and errors. What gets set up one week for one development team may not be exactly the same as the following week for a different development team. And that means that when the developers are working on applications, different revisions of applications, if that underlying hardware is not the same, that can lead to inconsistencies in the applications themselves. So vRealize Automation allows complex tasks to be automated simplifies the management of who gets access to which resources, provides a self-service IT catalog for users. Users can choose their workspace and requirements as and when they need it. They no longer have to ask IT. So this is all managed via a nice, simple self-service portal where users can provision Tomcat servers, maybe for web services, a Linux environment if they want to test applications in Linux. This handles all the background interdependencies, provide all the appropriate rights to get access to that Tomcat server and do the work that needs to be done without having to do that. And of course, the next time the same thing is asked for, it's provisioned in exactly the same way. Because it's all automated, IT can actually build costings into this chargeback, which means that development teams can be accurately billed and their costs accurately represented from the work they do. It can span cloud. So if you need to provision services in the cloud, IT now have the capability to look at the cost of doing something in a private cloud environment versus a public cloud and then make a decision as to whether it's worth investing more resource in private cloud or whether to look at migration to public cloud. So a few more of the features there. Again, pause the video, feel free to have a look at that. So the final section I'm going to talk about is disaster recovery and the various disaster recovery options VMware has. VMware uses a process called vMotion to allow virtual machines to be transitioned between compute hosts. Fault tolerance allows you to run 2 virtual machines in lockstep with one another. So for every new instruction sent to one virtual machine, that is mirrored identically in another virtual machine, so that in the event of a compute host, a vSphere host going down, instead of there being a migration, the lockstepped virtual machine takes over, becomes the primary, and in the background will fire up another virtual machine, which it will then put into lockstep also, so that you've got complete fault tolerance. vSphere replication allows virtual machines to be transitioned between sites. So initially a virtual machine is copied from one site to another and then changes to that live virtual machine. Only the differences are replicated between a production site and a disaster recovery site. And the process that manages that is called vSphere replication. It's included with vSphere asynchronous, which means it goes one way to the other at one time. SRM, or Site Recovery Manager, is an extension to vCenter. Works with vSphere replication to automate failover. If you want to test your organization's capabilities to recover in the event of a disaster, you can use Site Recovery Manager for this. Site Recovery Manager allows you to run simplified automatic tests of your disaster recovery. And these are some of the use cases. Unplanned failover, a natural disaster at your production site, maybe a power cut. SRM can test for you the capabilities of your disaster recovery to bring up virtual machines in your disaster recovery site. It can test for preventative failover. So if you know a power cut is going to happen in your primary site, you can plan for that. If you know you're going to migrate virtual machines between sites, SRM can be used to help you plan that process and ensure the process goes smoothly and report back accordingly. A few different SRM topologies which you can look at. The reporting features of Site Recovery Manager are important. In certain industries, you have a requirement to ensure your organization stays up and running in the event of a disaster, and the SRM reporting features will enable you to test your organization's capabilities in the face of a disaster. In addition to the private cloud services VMware has for disaster recovery, there's also Vmware Vcloud Air, which provides disaster recovery as a service or business continuity in the cloud. Has a very, very simple management interface. It hooks straight into vCenter, guarantees you a level of access to compute resource, memory resource in the cloud. It's a paid subscription, so you pay for what you use and then you pay for storage. You can carry out 2 disaster recovery plans a year if you wish, each for 7 days. So if you want to test your disaster recovery capabilities, VMware Vcloud Air DR will enable you to do that. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.